Conspiracies which concern the environment are all pervasive. They affect our bodies. They threaten our health. They threaten the future of our planet. Conspiracies abound about the manipulation of the environment. Some are about sources of energy.
As a result of the heavy Watergate conspiracy against cold fusion, the world has lost a major source of hope.
Some are about food.
If you can patent the food supply, then you can surreptitiously put anything you want to in the food supply, and you can foist it off on the citizenry.
And even about environmental activists.
She had told me that she had considerable concerns and was frightened for her life.
The greatest green conspiracy story is about the suppression of hemp, the non-narcotic sister plant of marijuana. A versatile plant has been used to make everything from paper to clothing. Actor Woody Harrelson has risked arrest in his campaign to legalize hemp in the US.
Hemp is non-psychoactive, so you couldn't get your dog high if you smoked a field, you know. Hemp is hip. It's a great fiber at a time when there's a serious fiber shortage throughout the world. I really can't see myself at the Oscars, but if I go there, I'll be wearing hemp. That's guaranteed.
This plant had been grown for cordage and coarse cloth in China and elsewhere in the East. For centuries prior to about 1850, all the ships that sailed the western seas were rigged with hempen rope and sails.
You have a plant, and that plant's greater than all the other plants on Earth combined for making fuel, combined for making paper. And it leaves the Earth healthier for having grown there. Its seed is the finest protein, the finest food source on Earth, and they've outlawed it. In the United States, it's outlawed.
1930s America was in the grip of anti-drugs hysteria, fueled by government propaganda. Marijuana was labeled a demon drug, and hemp was assumed to be the same. The plants are of the same family and look almost identical, but hemp is marijuana's virginal little sister and contains virtually no narcotic element. So why was hemp banned?
During the 1930s, it was discovered that oil was usable for synthetic textiles. The biggest competitors in synthetics was hemp. The crop was restricted because of vested interest by industry, and mainly the petroleum industry, so it was banned under a Marijuana Tax Act.
Conspiracy theorists blame giant American companies like DuPont. It had just invented nylon and had also developed a new technique to make paper from wood. Some think corporate interests persuaded the government to ban hemp to make way for more profitable materials.
The men in Congress at that time, sitting on the House Ways and Means Committee, I've traced each one of them back, and each one of them were into DuPont's pocket. From the chairman of the board to the other, from the Democrat to the Republican side, they were all in DuPont's pocket.
No hard evidence proves this, and DuPont says there was no conspiracy in the 1930s aimed at securing a US government ban on hemp. DuPont points out nylon and hemp have different properties and are aimed at different markets. Quite simply, nylon presented an astonishing innovation and rapidly became very popular. Other traditional and natural fibers like silk and hemp simply couldn't compete on a world scale.
The popularity of hemp ended because it was a very labour-intensive crop to try to extract the fibre from. I don't see that anybody would have needed to suppress hemp. It died of its own accord simply because of the march of time.
The ban on hemp was taken up by most UN countries, but in the public mind, it was a ban on drugs.
Oh man, look at the size of that pot, big and green.
While marijuana and hemp have remained illegal in the US to this day, in the early 90s, the British government licensed hemp to be grown again. But some hemp producers feel the government is still blurring the difference between legal hemp and illegal marijuana.
The government at the present time has been continuing to propagate the misinformation to the public, and it has sabotaged business for us.
The British Home Office says it recognises, supports and licenses legitimate hemp cultivation. But Derek Bealby believes the difference between the legal and illegal plant remains blurred, which prevents British farmers benefiting from a potentially valuable crop. Even car door panels, glass and petrol can be made using hemp.
What we do is legal, but the misinformation that's out there makes us or the farmer look as if we're handling illegal crops or drugs.
Free energy has been at the heart of one of the biggest environmental conspiracy theories. Cold fusion was announced to an unsuspecting world in 1989.
Two scientists, one of them from Southampton University, are claiming a breakthrough in the production of energy by nuclear fusion, the same process that powers the sun.
The experiment passed an electric current through a type of hydrogen naturally present in seawater, with the electricity apparently squeezing the nuclei of the solution so tightly that energy was released.
We have found conditions where fusion takes place and can be sustained indefinitely. Now, indefinitely is an emotive word. We have run experiments for hundreds of hours, and on our time scale, that is a pretty long time.
The news that free energy could be generated simply and from something as ordinary as seawater was greeted with enormous excitement.
This is worthy of a Nobel Prize if it turns out to be true.
But scientists all over the world who rushed to replicate the experiment couldn't get the same result.
Britain's leading atomic scientists have poured cold water on the idea of cold fusion. Researchers say there's no evidence that it works.
We've checked, calibrated everything. We've done it very thoroughly indeed.
So how disappointed are you?
Oh, very disappointed. This would have been a very significant discovery, and we're very sad that we've put all this effort in and failed to find anything.
The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, was among the first to dispute the result. The cold fusion theorists Martin Fleischmann and Stanley Pons were in the firing line.
What I observed when I was working at the MIT news office was behind-the-scenes politicking, attempts to plant disreputable stories against Pons and Fleischmann.
They had some sort of party in which they celebrated the means of cold fusion.
There's no evidence that MIT were purposefully plotting to discredit cold fusion or the scientists behind it. Other reputable labs couldn't stand up cold fusion either.
The work that MIT did, which found no evidence whatsoever for cold fusion, parallels the work that was done at Caltech, at Harwell, at the DOE labs, at laboratories around the world, that all of them were investigating it at that time.
But Eugene Mallow feels they deliberately failed to replicate the experiment.
The frontline shock troops in general, but particularly at MIT, against cold fusion were undoubtedly the hot fusion people. They had the most to lose.
Hot fusion researchers thought they were at the cutting edge. Unlike cold fusion, their experiments were expensive and needed serious funding. Cold fusion was a threat to their budgets.
They did fear, and a realistic fear, was that Congress would shift some of their hot fusion money, $25 million in fact was on the table of the $300 million, to be shifted to cold fusion research. They didn't want that.
Some believe it wasn't the scientists who had the most to lose.
This is much too large a subject to have had a single concerted conspiracy. There might have been all sorts of small, minor conspiracies working within some general framework. Well, certainly the United States Department of Energy was one of the key players in this.
If you want to look back and you see where the financial links are, the Department of Energy was basically at the servants of the nuclear industry and to the oil industry, and they had a lot to lose by this discovery, to say the least.
But for the scientific establishment, these are far-fetched explanations for a theory that simply did not work.
It's impossible to believe that scientists, world governments, industry could somehow conspire to stop advances happening. Somebody else somewhere else would do it and get all the credit.
Fleischmann got no credit. He still believes in cold fusion, but he has failed to convince the rest of the world.
From the point of view of my personal life, it's been a total disaster, as you can imagine.
Perhaps of all the environmental conspiracies, those about food trouble us most.
The world's first processed food to be made from genetically modified fruit has gone on sale here. It's tomato paste from tomatoes which have an added gene.
Artificial genes can now be inserted in vegetables to make them bigger, stronger, brighter, and last longer. Even animals and plants are crossed for scientific advances. It's the brave new world of so-called Frankenstein foods.
We are the guinea pigs.
But health is only one concern. The fear is also about the control of the food supply.
Biotech companies want to not only make enormous amounts of money convincing the world that the only thing to eat is genetically engineered food, but they want to patent the food. And they can do that by patenting the seeds and by controlling the seed companies.
One of the scare stories about GM corporations is that they have created a seed that'll make the farmer endlessly dependent. The Terminator seed.
The sole purpose of the Terminator seed is to create a seed which destroys itself within a year and does not cannot be reused further seeds. So the idea is that people have to keep on buying new seeds year in and year out.
So conspiracy theorists believe GM techniques can stifle life, not just fiddle with it. The Terminator seed was developed in the late 1990s. Many major food companies have since been developing their own version of these sterilized seeds.
A lot of the distribution of seeds is becoming more and more monopolized in fewer hands. The fear is that eventually there won't be any choice in the matter.
The gigantic chemical companies have virtually cornered the world market on food seeds already. Now they genetically engineer those seeds and they say, voila, this is our creation, we own it, it's ours. And in order to buy it, to have it, to lease it, to use it, you have to come to us. We own life. This is what they really get off on.
But corporations have been stopped in their tracks. Protests amongst consumers, farmers, and environmentalists have halted the production of Terminator seeds. The US firm Monsanto was a GM pioneer and is now one of the largest GM producers. But in 1999, Monsanto's chief executive went on the record saying the claim that their GM seeds and foods were heading for world domination was nonsense.
I've spoken with many food processors and food manufacturing companies, and those who really believe that there is a consumer demand for non-genetically modified product have been able to find supplies for it. When the labeling process is complete, and I don't know when that will be, it will be available, I'm confident, side by side, and consumers will make whatever choices they want to make.
But fields have become test beds for GM seeds and crops. Activists in Britain have been arrested for destroying test sites. They fear that GM seeds can spread, contaminating surrounding fields and threatening the normal production of food.
None of us thought we had done anything dishonest, and the jury, I'm delighted to say, agreed with that.
These protesters were cleared of criminal charges, but GM testing remains legal. And will the next test sites be human?
What else are these companies going to be researching? Well, let's try to find a gene that can make people more sedate and docile. What an interesting idea. Let's research this. And if we can find such a gene, we can insert it in food. You can begin putting other things in here, into this food. You put vaccines in there, which is a project already underway. Now, for people who believe, as I do, that the research shows that vaccines are very toxic, you now have no choice. You get vaccines in your food. people, millions and billions of people, are going to be controlled. Issues of sickness and health as a result of what genes are placed into the food. Issues of, shall we sedate the citizenry by placing other genes in food? All of these issues are going to be decided by biotech companies and by their partner governments. They're not going to be decided by people. If you own the food supply, if you can patent the food supply, then you can surreptitiously put anything you want to in the food supply, and you can foist it off on the citizenry. That's the long-range plan.
So what's next? Could corporations and companies go so far as to use environmental concerns for their own ends?
High above the Earth, a band of natural ozone shields human, animal and plant life from excessive ultraviolet radiation and potentially fatal sunburn. But it's been progressively depleted, and the depletion threatens a huge increase in skin cancers and cataracts.
Chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, were used as cooling agents in refrigerators, in air conditioning, and as propellants in aerosols. They were blamed for eating into the ozone layer and have been gradually phased out throughout the 1990s. DuPont was one of the largest manufacturers of CFCs. Conspiracy theorists say DuPont's environmental concern was not genuine when it decided to give up manufacturing CFCs. Theorists say DuPont did so because its patent had run out.
Commercial patents last for 50 years. The patent for the production of CFCs was taken out in November 1943. 50 years down the line, November 1993, the patent expires, at which point anybody with a basic commercial chemical process can manufacture CFC, gas for refrigeration.
But is this the stuff of fantasy? In 1974, DuPont stated it would end production of CFCs if scientific evidence proved they caused ozone depletion. In 1988, after being presented with such evidence, DuPont announced it would look for alternatives. The company maintains the patent for CFCs had run out decades before it phased out these products. But some scientists say self-interest must have played a part.
There is an underlying degree of truth. Some of the substitutes for CFCs are more profitable, so there was, I think, some self-interested motives on the part of DuPont to at least not oppose the CFC phase out and eventually to actually support it. Ozone depletion, the threat posed by CFCs and other ozone depleting compounds is not the crisis that some have suggested that it is, nor is it the hoax that a few others suggested that it is. It's something in the middle, a legitimate but considerably exaggerated environmental concern. And so many of the conspiracy theories surrounding it are untrue.
It's the belief that environmental conspiracies are true that motivates some green campaigners. And according to conspiracy theorists, people who take on the commercial giants can themselves become targets.
Hilda Murrell was 78 when she died. She was taken from her home. Her body was found with stab wounds 7 miles away.
Many questions remain unanswered about the fate of leading British environmental campaigner Hilda Murrell. The outspoken anti-nuclear activist had unearthed material about the Sizewell nuclear reactor. In March 1984, Lawrence Otter, a fellow campaigner, received an unexpected call from Hilda.
She said, "I've got a lot of papers I want published. I'm certain my phone is bugged. I'm certain there's people watching my house. I'm being followed as I go into the town. My house has been broken into once, and I'm scared." She said, could I come and collect the papers straight away? She didn't think it was safe even to keep them the whole day. Her last words to me were, "It's not only about nuclear power."
The meeting never took place. Hilda Murrell was last seen within an hour of the phone call. Lawrence Otter was stunned when he heard the news.
Her home was broken into, police believe by a burglar looking for cash. They think she was then beaten up, driven in her own Renault car to a wood 6 miles away, stabbed and left to die from the cold. Police inquiry...
Why would someone allegedly a burglar, not steal jewellery, not steal money that was to hand, why would this supposed burglar have shoved her in a car and driven her this curious way in order to kill her? And how on earth could her car keys be in her back pocket all this time? I mean, there's so many contradictions in the story, they can't really be so stupid as to really believe it.
Lawrence Otter believes that the papers Hilda Murrell had told him about were never found. She was about to give evidence to a public inquiry about the Sizewell nuclear reactor. But family and fellow activists suspect she may have uncovered top-secret information about the sinking of the Argentinian ship the Belgrano by the Royal Navy during the Falklands War. Labour MP Tam Diel then accused the British intelligence services of being involved in Hilda Murrell's death.
I've made various inquiries from sources the names of whom wild horses won't drag out of me, and learnt very clearly. He said, yes, British intelligence was involved.
But a police inquiry cleared the secret services of any involvement in Hilda's death.
There is not one shred of evidence to even suggest that British intelligence were in any way involved in the murder of Hilda Murrell.
Her murderer was never found. The case was never resolved.
I can only assume that someone has told them that they don't want the case investigated. And I can only assume that that comes from very high up, at least cabinet level.
Conspiracy theorists claim that governments would kill to safeguard their interests, and it's not always paranoia. The Greenpeace ship Rainbow Warrior was sunk by the French Secret Service in 1985, and it cost the life of one on board. But some environmental conspiracies could be myths. They flourish where the interests of corporate giants clash with our concerns for health and survival. And when science fails to explain precisely what's wrong with the world, conspiracy theorists fill the gap. Some conspiracy theories in time prove to be well-founded. The scary part is waiting to find out.
Cold fusion. The world has lost a major source of hope.
Some are about food.
If you can patent the food supply, then you can surreptitiously put anything you want to in the food supply, and you can foist it off on the citizenry.
And even about environmental activists.
She had told me that she had considerable concerns and was frightened for her life.
The greatest green conspiracy story is about the suppression of hemp, the non-narcotic sister plant of marijuana. A versatile plant is being used to make everything from paper to clothing. Actor Woody Harrelson has risked arrest in his campaign to legalize hemp in the US.
Hemp is non-psychoactive.
Conspiracies which concern the environment are all pervasive. They affect our bodies. They threaten our health. They threaten the future of our planet. Conspiracies abound about the manipulation of the environment. Some are about sources of energy.
As a result of the heavy Watergate conspiracy against coal
source on Earth, and they've outlawed it. In the United States, it's outlawed.
1930s America was in the grip of anti-drugs hysteria, fueled by government propaganda. Marijuana was labeled a demon drug, and hemp was assumed to be the same. The plants are of the same family and look almost identical, but hemp is marijuana's virginal little sister and contains virtually no narcotic element. So why was hemp banned?
During the 1930s, it was discovered that oil was usable for synthetic textiles. The biggest competitor in synthetics was hemp. The crop was restricted because of vested interest by industry, and mainly the petroleum industry. So it was banned under a Marijuana Tax Act.
Conspiracy theorists blame giant American companies like DuPont. It had just invented nylon and had also developed a new technique to make paper from wood. Some think corporate interests persuaded the government to ban hemp to make way for more profitable materials.
The men in Congress at that time, sitting on the House Ways and Means Committee, I've traced each one of them back, and each one of them were into DuPont's pocket. From the chairman of the board to the other, from the Democrat to the Republican side, they were all in DuPont's pocket.
No hard evidence proves this, and DuPont says there was no conspiracy in the 1930s aimed at securing a US government ban on hemp. DuPont points out nylon and hemp have different properties and are aimed at different markets. Quite simply, nylon presented an astonishing innovation and rapidly became very popular.
So you couldn't get your dog high if you smoked a field, you know. Hemp is hip. It's a great fiber at a time when there's a serious fiber shortage throughout the world. I really can't see myself at the Oscars, but if I go there, I'll be wearing hemp. That's guaranteed.
This plant had been grown for cordage and coarse cloth in China and elsewhere in the East. For centuries prior to about 1850, all the ships that sailed the western seas were rigged with hempen rope and sails.
You have a plant, and that plant's greater than all the other plants on Earth combined for making fuel, combined for making paper. And it leaves the Earth healthier for having grown there. Its seed is the finest protein, the finest food.